The Premier has again lashed out at the judiciary, saying judges would do a better job if they started out their career as police officers. Barry O'Farrell says police are more in touch with community expectations. As Simon Palan reports, that's infuriated the legal community.
The Premier has some advice for the courts.
Maybe the solution to getting better sentences out of the courts is to appoint to the bench qualified people, though, who have had experience, whether as police prosecutors or on the front line of policing.
He says judges are handing out sentences that are too weak, in particular the 4-year jail term to Kieran Loveridge for the attack that killed Thomas Kelly.
I'm just worried that the judiciary is out of touch. Police who have been on the front line of some of these situations have a far better grasp of the violence and the effect of that violence.
There are already several former police officers who went on to get a law degree and became a magistrate or judge in New South Wales.
Police officers are great to be on the bench. Not only do they bring in community standards and values, but also they've seen it all.
But the Premier's suggestion has angered those in legal circles. The Bar Association says it is ill thought out and will erode public confidence in the courts.
Our system of government has separation of powers. We don't want a system where we have the government interfering with the judiciary.
In a recent speech, the Chief Justice said judges are not isolated from the reality of crime. Not only are judges members of the community, but sentencing judges have seen more of the reality of crime than most members of the community can imagine. The legal fraternity has already expressed heavy criticism of the state government's introduction of mandatory sentencing for assaults occasioning death. It's expected mandatory sentencing will also be introduced for non-fatal assaults after Parliament returns in 2 weeks' time. Simon Palan, ABC News.
The nation's most powerful banker has acknowledged what many have suspected for some time, that foreign investors are helping to drive up house prices. The Reserve Bank governor says that wealthy foreigners have a big interest in Australia. Simon Palan reports.
The influx of foreign investors into Australia's housing market is making it harder for local buyers.
It's quite noticeable when you pick up a Singaporean newspaper on the plane that you see advertising for Australian property. The role of foreign investors is quite prominent indeed.
10 years ago, Chinese investors bought around 2% of total new Australian homes. Today, they account for almost 12% of the market.
House prices are increasing. A lot of particularly younger people are being locked out of the housing market.
The fact that prices are going up pretty strongly in the big cities is the evidence that foreign investors are pretty active.
There's concern Canada's decision to stop granting visas for its foreign investors could cause them to turn to Australia instead and trigger even more price rises.
It is incumbent upon us as policymakers to look at whether there are any underlying factors that might contribute to this.
It probably goes to broader questions of how welcoming we wish to be to foreign investment generally, and that can be a vexed issue at times.
House price growth is also being driven by domestic investors who are taking advantage of record low interest rates. And the RBA governor has given his strongest indication yet that rates will stay low.
On present indications, the most prudent course appears to be likely a period of stability.
Interest rates are very low for domestic borrowers, and then on top of that, you're getting the foreign investors coming in as well. That's why price growth is very strong.
With prices rising, home ownership has rarely looked more appealing and out of reach. Simon Palan, ABC News.
There's been a dramatic fall in the number of New South Wales home buyers receiving the First Home Buyers Grant. Analysts say the changes to the scheme are to blame, as well as an influx of foreign buyers. Simon Palan has more.
Sahar Mapoor spent 5 months looking to buy a new home to qualify for the First Home Buyers Grant. But she says what's on the market is too expensive and there's nothing available near the city.
I found it a very frustrating experience and it was quite nerve-wracking as well.
So she gave up and bought an established home instead, missing out on the $15,000 grant.
It's really a desert out there for first home buyers at the moment, and the prospects really aren't good going forward.
Changes made in 2012 mean first home buyers are only eligible for the grant if the home they buy is new and under $650,000.
There's not a lot of new stock on the market within a 20-kilometre radius of the CBD.
The government's aim is to increase housing supply, but it's led to a big fall in the number of first home buyers taking advantage of the grant, which was doubled from $7,000. About 7,800 first home buyers received the grant last year, compared to 36,600 in 2011.
I used to do probably 2 or 3 applications per week for first home buyers, and I'd process their grant. Now I've done 1 in the last 3 months.
Making it even harder is an influx of investors, both locally and from offshore. Under federal laws, foreign investors are only allowed to buy new homes in Australia, meaning they're going head-to-head with local buyers who are trying to take advantage of the grant. The demand is sending prices even higher, and analysts say many of the suburbs with the biggest price gains are in areas popular with buyers in Asia.
And those areas are close to the CBD, are moving down towards Mascot, areas such as Ultimo and Alexandria.
The state government says there are no plans to change the first home buyers scheme. Simon Palan, ABC News, Sydney.
Bad weather actually proved a blessing at Bondi after a man lost control of his car and crashed onto the beach. The driver was taken to hospital, but with cool and rainy conditions keeping beachgoers away, there were no other injuries. Simon Palan reports.
It was the sand at Bondi Beach that finally brought this car to a halt. Paramedics say its 90-year-old driver may have blacked out at the wheel.
All I could see was this older guy in sort of lock mode with his arms, and he was obviously having a seizure or something.
This CCTV footage shows a pedestrian running for their life as the out-of-control car mounted the footpath. It hit street signs as well as tables and chairs at this cafe.
All my chairs and tables were flung across the road. All the traffic had stopped. You know, it was just crazy.
The car then crossed the road and travelled 60 metres down an embankment before breaking through a barricade and landing on the sand. The driver was taken to hospital with chest injuries and is in a stable condition. But amazingly, there were no other injuries.
It could have been catastrophic had it been a busy day there and those cafes filled with patrons and that, so we're very fortunate.
Authorities and locals say luckily the rainy weather meant there weren't too many people in this general area at the time of the accident. If it were a sunny day, they say, it would have been a completely different story.
If it was a sunny day like yesterday, there would have been absolute carnage.
The car has been towed off the sand and police say the driver's licence will likely be reviewed. Simon Palan, ABC News, Bondi.
It sounds like a match made in shopping heaven. It's been revealed that retail giant Myer proposed a merger with its rival David Jones. DJs said no, but analysts say a merger is still on the cards and it could make the companies more competitive against international retailers. Simon Palan reports.
They are the duelling giants of Australian fashion, on the catwalk and the high street. Myer and David Jones are the fiercest of rivals, so the prospect of them joining forces seems difficult to fathom. But one of David Jones's biggest shareholders says a merger should happen.
The benefit should be massive, much more than in a normal merger between companies, I would think.
Australia's once thriving department store sector has been bruised by a higher Australian dollar and the rise of online shopping. There's also the big threat posed by several overseas department stores coming down under.
Such as Topshop, there's rumours that Marks and Spencer's has secured some property. So I believe we're going to get more and more competition.
To help fight back, it's been revealed that Myer proposed a $3 billion merger with David Jones. That offer was rejected.
But I think if Myer come with a proper proposal that is a benefit to shareholders, I'm sure the directors will put it to shareholders.
The impact on consumers from any merger is unclear. If it happened, analysts say Myer and David Jones would probably retain their brands, but combine back-office functions, saving as much as $90 million.
Well, the key benefit will be to merge the offices and reduce the number of property that they have on their books.
News of the proposed merger comes as the Australian Securities and Investments Commission investigates the purchase of David Jones shares by 2 company directors. They bought the shares one day after the Myer proposal. ASIC took no action against the directors.
It's really a problem with the law. The insider trading laws are very complex, they're very convoluted.
The corporate watchdog has ruled out any further pursuit of the David Jones directors. Simon Palan, ABC News.
A Sydney cycling club is calling on the state government to introduce new measures to protect them on the roads. 5 cyclists were hospitalised on the weekend when they collided with a car in Sydney's east. Simon Palan reports.
Tom Patten is a professional cyclist who spends up to 20 hours a week on the road. He rides in fear of accidents like this.
You just feel there's a car coming behind you the whole time, which it obviously is, but you're not getting much room. There is a lot of traffic there, and yeah, people just are willing to take risks to get past you.
When cars and bikes do collide, it can be disastrous. On the weekend, 5 riders from Sydney's eastern suburbs cycling club were seriously injured after being struck by a car on the notoriously dangerous Southern Cross Drive. 3 of them were admitted to intensive care after back surgery. The club's president wants the state government to introduce certain times when cyclists have exclusive use of a single lane on some Sydney roads.
Time zones will be good, from say 5 in the morning till 9:30 in the morning. That's when cyclists go out on weekends.
From next month, Queensland will trial 1 metre laws, which aim to keep cars a safe distance from cyclists. Here, the government says its focus is on education.
We need more mutual respect between cyclists and drivers. And we need drivers to always check twice for cyclists, and we need them to allow the space that cyclists need.
But as the number of cyclists increased, so do the fatalities. Last year, 14 cyclists were killed on New South Wales roads, double the year before. Safety experts say the solution begins with mutual respect and common courtesy. Simon Palan, ABC News, Sydney.